top 3 horse feeding myths. Number 1, that I have heard in my 14 years of being a feed store associate is that alfalfa will make my horse hot, or alfalfa will warm my horse up, or alfalfa makes my horse have a lot of energy. I don't know what people mean specifically when they say this. Some people mean that it specifically raises the temperature of their horse. Some people think that it actually makes their horse have more energy. So let's address both. First, alfalfa raises the temperature of my horse. I've actually seen people that come and buy alfalfa during the winter time when it's really cold because they say that it warms their horses' bellies up. That is, I guess, somewhat truth. Scientifically speaking, the digestion process does actually raise your temperature and actually will do that a little bit. So if you've ever heard of the meat sweats, when you eat a lot of protein at once, that will actually raise your temperature. So that will do that for humans as well as horses. However, that is not a significant portion of the horse's energy or heat being raised. The second to that is alfalfa makes my horse have more energy or makes them hot, meaning spirited. That is not necessarily the case overall speaking for a horse's energy. That protein specifically will do that. A lot of people refer to that in sugar and starch, which alfalfa actually has less sugar and starch than most other ingredients. So that is not the case in either of those scenarios. The second horse feeding myth that is completely wrong in the horse feed world is that all byproducts, when you read the word byproducts on a horse feed label, that they are all bad for your horse. There are names that get bad raps like fillers and byproducts and things like that. But what a byproduct is, when you see it on a horse label, is that that product is not being used for its intended purpose. Let me give you an example. Beet pulp is an incredible source of fiber for a horse. It is very high in fiber because it is the outside fibrous part of a sugar beet plant. So sugar beets are what are the predominant, the main thing that people are harvesting to sell to the general public for human consumption. But when sugar beets, the beet pulp, the outside of the sugar beet plant, is used for horse feed, it is actually a byproduct of that. So sugar beets are the human part. Byproduct of sugar beets is beet pulp. So it's not that beet pulp is bad for horses because it's a byproduct. It's because that is not the intended purpose when they harvested that plant. So not all byproducts, when you see it on a feed tag, are bad for your horse. The third and final myth that we're going to cover with horse feeding myths is that mixing up your feed, somehow you can save money by doing that. Let's address this in 2 ways. Some people will come and buy alfalfa pellets, oats, beet pulp, a little bit of molasses, all different sorts of ingredients from a feed store and try to mix it all up in a big mash. You are typically not going to outwit or outsmart a feed manufacturing facility that is pumping out tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds per day of horse feed to the general public. You're not going to buy at larger quantities. You're not going to buy at better prices than those feed mills. They are also able to mix that better than you would ever be able to mix it, mixing it in your horse's bucket. So buying those different ingredients, unless you're trying to make some custom feed for yourself, that might be your mojo, and that's fine. But the other thing that people do is they try to water down, if you will, their feed. So they'll buy a expensive feed, let's say a $25 a bag of sweet feed or of a premium pellet or something like that. Then they will mix in other ingredients to kind of cheapen it up a bit. So maybe they'll mix it with alfalfa pellets, or maybe they'll mix it with oats or something like that. What you're doing by doing that is this horse feed is made specifically for what the horse needs to eat in one day. It's the specific amount of vitamins and minerals this horse needs for the day. It's a specific protein that this horse needs for the intended purpose per day. It is the specific, all of those things that a horse needs to eat in one day. By introducing other ingredients to that, you are then inadvertently making that balanced feed imbalanced. So what used to happen is people would buy a very expensive feed and then mix in oats to it. Oats are actually more expensive than most feeds now, so that's not even cheaping it up. And oats are actually very high in starch and sugar, so that's actually bad for the mix in the first place. So mixing your ingredients all together is usually a bad idea for your horse.